The sun hung low in the sky, casting an amber glow across the dusty plains of Arizona. A lone figure trudged along a well-worn trail, his boots kicking up small clouds of dirt with each heavy step. The man was old, his face weathered by years under the unrelenting desert sun, but what made him truly stand out wasn't his age or his weary appearance. It was the fact that he couldn't see. His eyes were milky white, blind from some long-forgotten tragedy, and yet there he was, walking alone through the wilderness as if guided by some unseen force. People in the nearby town of Blackwater had always whispered about him. They called him Old Man Bennett, though no one knew for sure if that was even his real name. He lived on the outskirts of town, on a dilapidated ranch that seemed to be cursed from the moment it was built. The barn was falling apart. The fences sagged under their own weight, and the fields lay barren, untouched by any hand except nature's cruel indifference. Yet despite its state of disrepair, people still came to laugh at him. Laugh at the blind rancher who tried to eke out a living in a place where nothing grew. But little did they know, beneath all the ridicule and mockery, Old Man Bennett harbored a secret so profound that it would change everything they thought they knew about him and about themselves. It was a hot summer evening when the first strange thing happened. The air was thick with the scent of dry earth and sagebrush, and the stars above twinkled like tiny diamonds scattered across the velvet blackness of the night sky. Most folks in Blackwater were already inside, seeking refuge in the oppressive heat, but not Old Man Bennett. He sat on the porch of his crumbling cabin, his gnarled hands resting on the wooden railing as he listened intently to the sounds around him. To anyone else, it might have sounded like just another quiet night in the desert. The distant howl of a coyote, the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze, the occasional chirp of crickets. But to him, these noises painted a vivid picture, a map of sorts that allowed him to navigate the world without sight. That night, however, something was different. There was a sound, an almost imperceptible creaking noise coming from somewhere beyond the edge of his property. It wasn't the wind playing tricks on him. He could feel the vibrations in the ground beneath his feet. Curious, he stood up slowly, gripping his cane tightly as he moved toward the source of sound. His mule, a stubborn beast named Samson, followed close behind, ears twitching nervously as if sensing something unusual too. As he approached the edge of his land, the sound grew louder, more distinct. It was the sound of shifting rocks, of dirt being disturbed. And then, suddenly, the ground gave way beneath him. Before he could react, he tumbled forward, landing hard on his side. Pain shot through his body, but he ignored it, scrambling to his feet as quickly as his aging limbs would allow. In front of him, partially concealed by loose stones and debris, was a hole, a cave entrance that hadn't been there before. For a moment, he hesitated. The darkness yawned before him, mysterious and foreboding. But curiosity overtook fear, and he urged Samson closer, using the mule's bulk as both a shield and a guide. Together, they stepped into the unknown. Inside the cave, the air was cool and damp, a stark contrast to the sweltering heat outside. The walls glistened with moisture, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed softly in the stillness. As his fingers brushed against the rough stone surface, Old Man Bennett felt a shiver run down his spine, not from cold, but from anticipation. This place felt alive, as if it held secrets buried deep within its heart. Samson snorted uneasily, pawing at the ground with one hoof. "Easy now," Old Man Bennett murmured, patting the mule's neck reassuringly. Though he couldn't see, he could sense the animal's discomfort, and he understood it. There was something unsettling about this cave, something that defied explanation. Deeper they went, the passage narrowing until they were forced to move single file. The air grew heavier, charged with an energy that made the hair on the back of Old Man Bennett's neck stand on end. And then, without warning, the tunnel opened up into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadows far above. The floor was uneven, littered with boulders and jagged rocks, but what caught his attention most was the faint glimmer of light emanating from the center of the room. Cautiously, he made his way toward the source of the light, his cane tapping rhythmically against the stone floor. When he reached it, he gasped, not audibly, for his blindness prevented such expressions, but inwardly, as the realization hit him like a freight train. Buried in the ground was a chest, a massive iron chest, its surface encrusted with rust and age. But it wasn't the chest itself that drew his gaze. It was what was inside. Gold, glittering, shining gold coins piled high, along with jewels of every color imaginable. It was a treasure trove unlike anything he'd ever dreamed of, a fortune that could make kings weep with envy. But as he knelt beside it, running his fingers reverently over the cold metal, a voice spoke from the shadows. "Who dares disturb my rest?" Old Man Bennett froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The voice was deep and gravelly, filled with authority and menace. Slowly, he turned his head in the direction it had come from, though his blindness meant he couldn't pinpoint its exact location. "I mean you no harm," he replied, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "I stumbled upon this place by accident." There was a pause, long and tense, before the voice spoke again. "You are blind." "Yes," Old Man Bennett admitted. "I haven't seen the light of day in many years." "And yet you found me," the voice mused, a hint of admiration creeping into its tone. "Few have dared to venture this far. Fewer still have survived. What is this place?" Old Man Bennett asked, his curiosity overriding his caution. "It is a sanctuary," the voice answered cryptically. "A place where treasures are hidden and truths are revealed." Before he could press further, movement caught his attention, or rather, the sensation of movement. From the shadows emerged a figure, tall and imposing, dressed in clothing that looked as ancient as the cave itself. Its face was obscured by a hood, but Old Man Bennett could feel its piercing gaze boring into him, assessing, judging. "You may take one thing," the figure said finally. "Choose wisely." Without hesitation, Old Man Bennett reached into the chest and pulled out a small, intricately carved key. It was warm to the touch, humming faintly with an energy he couldn't quite describe. The figure nodded approvingly. "Good choice," it said. "That key will unlock doors you never imagined existed." And with that, the figure vanished, leaving Old Man Bennett alone once more in the cavernous chamber. For a long while, he simply sat there, holding the key in his trembling hands, trying to comprehend the enormity of what had just transpired. Little did he know this was only the beginning. When he returned to the surface, dawn was breaking over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. The townsfolk of Blackwater were already stirring, their laughter and chatter filling the air as they prepared for another day in the unforgiving desert. But when they saw Old Man Bennett emerge from the woods, leading Samson and carry himself with newfound confidence, their amusement quickly turned to confusion. "What's gotten into you?" one of them asked boldly, stepping forward to confront him. "You look different." Old Man Bennett smiled, a rare occurrence that sent shivers down the spines of those who witnessed it. "Let's just say I've seen things you wouldn't believe," he replied cryptically. Over the next few days, strange occurrences began to plague the town. Crops that had refused to grow for months suddenly sprouted overnight, lush and green. Wells that had been dry for years started producing fresh, clean water. Even the animals seemed to behave differently, their wild instincts tempered by some unseen force. The townsfolk were baffled, searching for answers but finding none, until, that is, they discovered the truth. One fateful night, under the cover of darkness, Old Man Bennett used the key he had taken from a cave. With Samson by his side, he walked straight into the heart of the ranch, where a hidden door had appeared in the earth. Beyond it lay wonders beyond imagining, a Garden of Eden in the middle of the desert, a paradise untouched by time or man. And as the townsfolk watched in disbelief, they realized the blind rancher was not cursed after all. He was blessed. But the biggest twist came later, when they learned the true identity of the figure in the cave. It wasn't a ghost or a spirit, as many had assumed. It was none other than Samson, the mule, transformed by magic into a guardian of unimaginable treasures. And so, the legend of the blind rancher and his enchanted companion spread far and wide, becoming a tale told around campfires for generations to come. The days that followed were unlike anything the town of Blackwater had ever experienced. The once barren land surrounding Old Man Bennett's ranch began to flourish with almost supernatural vigor. Trees sprouted where none had grown before, their branches heavy with fruit that seemed to ripen overnight. Streams appeared in places where dry riverbeds had lain dormant for decades, their waters crystal clear and brimming with fish. Even the air felt different, lighter, fresher, as though the very essence of life itself had been breathed back into the land. But while the transformation brought prosperity to the area, it also stirred unrest among the townsfolk. Whispers turned into murmurs, which eventually grew into outright accusations. Some believed Old Man Bennett had struck a deal with dark forces, trading his soul for prosperity he now enjoyed. Others thought he was merely lucky, a man who had stumbled upon riches beyond comprehension, and used them selfishly to elevate himself above his neighbors. Regardless of the source of their discontent, one thing was certain. The people of Blackwater could no longer ignore the blind rancher's newfound power. It started with small acts of defiance. A group of young men, fueled by jealousy and bravado, snuck onto Bennett's property late one night, determined to uncover the truth behind the miraculous changes. Armed with lanterns and pitchforks, they crept through the lush fields, their footsteps muffled by the thick grass that now covered what had once been parched earth. They approached the hidden door in the ground cautiously, half expecting some monstrous creature to leap out at them. Instead, they found nothing but silence and an overwhelming sense of unease. As they stood there debating whether to open the door, a voice cut through the stillness like a knife. "If you value your lives," it said low and menacing, "you will leave this place immediately." The group froze, turning in every direction to locate the source of sound. But there was no one there, only Samson, standing nearby with his ears flattened against his skull and his eyes gleaming unnaturally in the dim light. For a moment, they laughed nervously, dismissing the warning as mere superstition. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them began to tremble. Rocks shifted, dirt crumbled, and before they could react, the entrance to the secret cave collapsed, sealing itself shut. Shaken but unharmed, the intruders fled, vowing never to return. Yet their actions only served to fuel the growing tension between the townsfolk and Old Man Bennett. Rumors spread like wildfire, each more outrageous than the last. Some claimed the rancher possessed the ability to control the weather, summoning rainstorms whenever he pleased. Others whispered of ancient artifacts hidden within the cave, relics capable of granting unimaginable powers to those who dared wield them. Despite the hostility directed toward him, Bennett remained calm, his demeanor unchanged by the chaos swirling around him. He continued tending to his land, caring for his animals, and living much as he always had, though perhaps with a touch more confidence than before. When confronted directly by the mayor of Blackwater, a stern man named Sheriff Grady, who demanded answers about the strange occurrences on a ranch, Bennett simply smiled and replied, "Some things are better left unknown." Grady stormed away, muttering under his breath about arrogance and insolence, but deep down, even he couldn't deny the undeniable evidence of Bennett's influence. The crops in the town square were thriving, the livestock healthier than ever, and the well in the center of town flowed endlessly, providing clean water for all. These blessings should have been celebrated, but instead, they became points of contention, dividing the community into factions of believers and skeptics. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of crimson and gold, a delegation from Blackwater arrived at Bennett's doorstep. Among them were the wealthiest merchants, the most respected farmers, and even a few representatives from the local church, all united in their desire to confront the mysterious rancher once and for all. "We need answers," one of them declared boldly, stepping forward to address Bennett directly. "This phenomenon cannot continue unchecked. You must tell us the truth." Bennett nodded slowly, his milky white eyes fixed somewhere beyond their faces. "Very well," he said, "but understand this. What I am about to reveal may change everything you believe about yourselves and about me." He invited them inside, leading them to a room he had recently constructed using materials unearthed from the cave. The walls were lined with shelves filled with books, maps, and strange artifacts whose origins none could fathom. In the center of the room stood a large table, upon which rested the key Bennett had taken from the cave. Its surface shimmered faintly, pulsing with a soft, golden light. "This key," Bennett began, picking up carefully, "is not just a tool. It is a symbol, a gateway to understanding. What you see around you, the prosperity you've witnessed these past weeks. It is not mine alone to command. It belongs to something far greater than any of us." Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them began to rumble. The lights flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls, and then the figure from the cave emerged once again, stepping silently into the room. This time, however, it fell back, revealing a face both beautiful and terrifying. Its skin glowed faintly, its eyes burning with an inner fire, and its presence commanded absolute silence. "I am the keeper of balance," the figure announced, its voice resonating like thunder. "Long ago, I was entrusted with safeguarding the treasures buried here, not for wealth or power, but for harmony. Old Man Bennett has proven himself worthy of my trust, and thus I have chosen him as my ally." The delegation recoiled in shock, some crossing themselves while others struggled to find words. "But why him?" one of them stammered. "Why not someone more deserving?" The keeper tilted its head slightly, studying them with an intensity that made their skin crawl. "Deserving? Is that what you call greed, envy, and fear?" Bennett sees without sight, hears without prejudice, and acts without malice. Such qualities are rare among mortals. With that, the keeper raised a hand, and the room filled with a blinding light. When it faded, the delegates found themselves back outside, staring up at the stars in stunned silence. Bennett stood beside them, his expression serene, as though he had known all along how the night would end. From that day forward, the relationship between Blackwater and Old Man Bennett changed irrevocably. No longer did they mock or ridicule him. Instead, they sought his guidance, respecting the wisdom he carried within him. And though many still harbored doubts about the nature of his abilities, they could not deny the positive impact he had on their lives. As for Bennett, he lived out his remaining years peacefully, content in the knowledge that he had fulfilled his purpose. When he finally passed away, leaving behind neither heirs nor possessions, the townsfolk gathered to honor him, erecting a monument in his memory. On it were inscribed the words he had spoken during that fateful meeting. Asterisk, "Some things are better left unknown." Asterisk, and so the legend of the blind rancher endured, a tale whispered around campfires and shared across generations, a reminder that sometimes the greatest mysteries remain hidden, waiting patiently for those brave enough to seek them. The years passed quietly in Blackwater, the once skeptical townsfolk now regarding Old Man Bennett's ranch with a mixture of reverence and awe. Though he was gone, his legacy lingered like the faint echo of a distant thunderstorm, subtle yet undeniable. The land continued to thrive under an unseen hand, crops growing bountifully and animals living healthily, as if guided by some invisible force. Yet, beneath the surface calm of the town, whispers persisted, whispers of secrets still buried, truths yet untold. One such whisper came from a young boy named Jacob, whose curiosity burned brighter than any flame. He had been too young to remember Bennett personally, but had grown up hearing tales of the blind rancher and the enchanted mule, Samson. These stories fascinated him, fueling dreams of adventure and discovery. Unlike the adults, who had grown complacent in their newfound prosperity, Jacob believed there was more to uncover, a hidden truth waiting patiently for someone brave enough to seek it. It began on a warm spring afternoon, when Jacob wandered farther than usual into the woods behind Bennett's old ranch. The air was thick with the scent of wildflowers, and bird song filled the canopy above. As he walked, something caught his attention, a glimmer of light peeking through the underbrush. Pushing aside low-hanging branches, he stumbled upon a small clearing where a peculiar stone stood upright, half buried in the earth. Carved into its surface were symbols unlike anything Jacob had ever seen, twisting patterns that seemed almost alive, shifting subtly with every glance. "What is this?" Jacob murmured, reaching out hesitantly to touch the stone. No sooner had his fingers brushed its cold surface than the ground beneath him trembled violently. Startled, he stepped back, watching as the stone began to glow softly, casting golden light across the clearing. Then, without warning, the earth split open at his feet, revealing a narrow staircase descending deep into the ground. For a moment, fear gripped him, pulling at his senses like a phantom hand. But then curiosity took hold, stronger and fiercer than any cautionary voice in his head. Clutching a lantern he had brought along for just such occasions, Jacob descended cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. The staircase led him to a vast underground chamber, its walls lined with glowing crystals that cast an ethereal light throughout the space. In the center of the room stood another key, similar to the one described in the tales of Old Man Bennett, resting atop a pedestal made of polished black stone. Around the pedestal were carvings depicting scenes of nature, rivers flowing, trees blooming, animals thriving, all united in harmony. Jacob approached slowly, his breath catching as he realized the significance of what lay before him. "This must be another part of Bennett's secret," he whispered, his voice trembling with excitement. Before he could reach out and claim the key, however, a familiar sound echoed through the chamber, the soft snort of a mule. Turning sharply, Jacob saw Samson emerge in the shadows, his eyes gleaming unnaturally bright in the dim light. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, Jacob frozen in place, unsure whether to run or stay. Then, unexpectedly, Samson lowered his head and nudged the boy gently with his nose. It was not a threatening gesture, but rather one of encouragement, as though urging Jacob to continue exploring the mysteries laid before him. Taking this as a sign, Jacob stepped forward and grasped the key firmly in his hand. The moment he did so, the chamber erupted in a symphony of lights and sounds, a celebration of sorts, welcoming him as the next guardian of the ancient power. But little did Jacob know, this was only the beginning of his journey. Above ground, the world remained unaware of the forces awakening below. The balance maintained by Old Man Bennett and Samson would soon face new challenges, tests that required both courage and wisdom to overcome. And as the stars twinkled high above Blackwater, casting their watchful gaze over the sleeping town, the cycle of mystery and magic continued, weaving its intricate tapestry through time. In the end, perhaps the greatest truth of all was this: some secrets are meant to be shared, others to be safeguarded, and still others to be discovered anew by those willing to look beyond the veil of the ordinary. For in the Wild West, where legends were born and myths became reality, the line between man and magic was never truly clear, and neither was the path toward understanding the forces that shaped the land and its people. Jacob stood in the center of the chamber, the key now warm in his grasp, as if it had chosen him just as surely as he had chosen it. Samson remained by his side, watching silently with those unnerving, glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through Jacob's very soul. The boy felt a strange mix of emotions, excitement, fear, awe, all swirling together in the chaotic storm inside him. He wasn't sure what this key was for or why it had been left here, but one thing was certain. Whatever Bennett and Samson had guarded so carefully, it was now his responsibility. The crystals lining the walls began to hum softly, their glow intensifying until the entire chamber was bathed in an otherworldly light. Shadows danced across the floor, forming patterns that shifted and changed like living things. Jacob took a step back, startled, but Samson nudged him forward again, as if reminding him not to falter now. With trembling hands, Jacob raised the key, examining it closely. It was intricately carved, each groove and curve telling a story he couldn't yet understand. At its base was a single word etched into the metal: balance. Balance, Jacob whispered aloud, testing the word on his tongue. As soon as he spoke, the air around him seemed to vibrate, responding to the sound of the word. The humming from the crystals grew louder, resonating with a deep, almost musical tone. Then, without warning, the ground beneath him began to shift. Cracks spread outward from where Jacob stood, widening until they revealed another staircase, this one spiraling downward into darkness. Unlike the first staircase, which had been narrow and foreboding, this one seemed inviting, almost welcoming. Each step glowed faintly, guiding the way deeper into the earth. Jacob hesitated only briefly before taking the first step, Samson following close behind. The descent lasted longer than Jacob expected, the stairs winding endlessly through tunnels lined with more glowing crystals. Every few steps, he passed carvings similar to those in the chamber above, scenes of nature intertwined with symbols he didn't recognize. They told stories of creation, destruction, and renewal, painting a picture of a world far older and more complex than anything Jacob had ever imagined. Finally, after what felt like hours, the staircase opened into a vast cavern unlike anything Jacob had seen before. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, disappearing into shadows far above. Stalactites hung down like jagged teeth, while stalagmites rose up from the floor, creating natural pillars that supported the immense structure. In the center of the cavern stood a massive pool of water, its surface perfectly still and reflecting the light from countless crystals embedded in the walls. The water shimmered with colors that shouldn't have existed. Blues too bright, greens too vivid, purples too deep. And yet it all came together in a mesmerizing display. Around the edge of the pool were statues carved from stone, each depicting a different creature. Wolves, eagles, snakes, bears, and even creatures Jacob couldn't name. Their eyes were made of gemstones that pulsed faintly as though alive. Between two of the statues sat another pedestal, this one larger and more ornate than the one Jacob had encountered earlier. On top of it lay a second key, identical to the one Jacob held except for the word inscribed at its base, harmony. This must be another part of it, Jacob said, his voice barely above a whisper. His heart raced as he approached the pedestal, unsure whether he should take the second key or leave it untouched. Before he could decide, a low rumble echoed through the cavern, shaking the ground beneath his feet. Startled, Jacob stumbled backward, nearly dropping the first key. From the shadows emerged a figure, not human, but something else entirely. Its form was indistinct, shifting between shapes like smoke caught in a breeze. One moment it resembled a wolf, the next a serpent, then a bird, and finally a man. Its voice, when it spoke, carried echoes of every creature Jacob had ever heard, layered together in a symphony of sound. "Who dares disturb the sanctum?" the figure demanded, its tone both commanding and curious. "I am Jacob," the boy stammered, clutching the first key tightly in his hand. "I found the first key in the chamber above. I think I'm supposed to be here." The figure tilted its head, studying Jacob intently. "You carry the key of balance," it said, its voice resonating to the cavern. "But do you understand its purpose?" Jacob shook his head, embarrassed by his ignorance. "No, I don't. I just know it's important." "And the key of harmony," the figure continued, gesturing toward the pedestal. "Do you dare claim it without knowing its meaning?" Jacob hesitated, glancing nervously at Samson, who stood nearby, watching everything with unwavering focus. The mule gave no indication of what Jacob should do, leaving the decision entirely in his hands. "I don't know," Jacob admitted finally, "but I want to learn. I want to understand." The figure regarded him silently for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well," it said. "Take the key of harmony. But remember this, balance and harmony are not achieved alone. You will need allies, wisdom, and courage. And above all, you must trust yourself." With those words, the figure dissolved into mist, leaving Jacob alone with Samson and the two keys. Trembling slightly, Jacob reached out and grasped the second key. As soon as his fingers closed around it, the cavern erupted in light, brighter and more intense than anything he had experienced before. The statues around the pool came to life, their eyes blazing with energy as they moved in perfect synchronization, forming a circle around Jacob and Samson. A voice, no, many voices, spoke simultaneously, filling the air with a chorus of sound. The cycle begins anew. The guardians rise once more. May balance and harmony guide your path. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the light faded, and the cavern returned to its previous state. The statues froze in place, their eyes dimming once more, and the water in the pool resumed its stillness. Jacob looked down at the two keys in his hands, feeling the weight of their responsibilities settle over him like a heavy cloak. When Jacob finally emerged from the underground sanctuary, the sun was setting over Blackwater, casting long shadows across the land. He hadn't realized how much time had passed, but it didn't matter. Everything had changed for him, for the town, and perhaps for the entire region. Samson followed him silently, his presence a constant reminder of the bond they shared and the mission they now carried together. As Jacob walked back toward the ranch, he noticed something peculiar happening in the distance. The fields surrounding Blackwater were glowing faintly, their crops standing taller and healthier than ever before. Streams flowed where none had existed, and animals roamed freely, unafraid of humans. It was as though the land itself was celebrating the return of its protectors. Jacob smiled, despite the overwhelming sense of duty pressing down on him. He wasn't sure what challenges lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't face them alone. With the keys of balance and harmony in his possession and Samson by his side, he was ready to uncover the secrets of the past and shape the future of the Wild West. Little did he know, however, that the true test of his resolve was still waiting just beyond the horizon,